Welcome back to On the Volley. As you can see, I'm not in the pub today. Oops, dear. Let me get this a little bit closer. I'm not in the pub today, yeah. I'm in the back garden, okay, just chilling out. It's a gorgeous day, lovely breeze, and oh, what can I say? I'm blessed. Anyway, I just want to, apologise to the 3 people that commented on my last video. I read it, didn't get a chance to respond, unfortunately. I was out at the time, and that's Cut Rock Diecast Racing, that's his moniker on YouTube. Mark Nugent, and Mike O'Brien, who asked a relevant question: how am I? Thanks for the question, Mike. The truth is, okay, right, a lot of people know I've been having health issues over the last year, and the last 2 weeks it's just been up and down, up and down. To be totally honest, I don't know what's going on with me, trying to find out exactly what it is that isn't going right, so that I can try to resolve the problem, basically. It doesn't seem as if it's anything that I should really worry about, but it does really have an effect on my whole being at the moment. Anyway, that's that. I'm sure I'll get to the bottom of it. I'm back here today to talk about that man, Ange Postecoglou, who, as always, has been in the news for so long now, yeah? What, the last few months he's been in the news, and as we all know, 16 days after winning the Europa League Cup final, he gets sacked. But look, I don't think it was a shock to anyone, because let's be honest, yeah, the silence was deafening. There was not a word out of the Spurs camp. Daniel Levy didn't have anything to say. He kept it close to his chest, but there were lots of rumours, even before the cup final, where, Levy was looking for an alternative manager, somebody to replace Ange Postecoglou. What I don't understand, though, is this, yeah? Levy's put himself in a little bit of a difficult situation now, because after winning the Europa League Cup final, you then go ahead and sack the first manager that's won a trophy in the last 17 years and has put his name up there with Nicholson and Birkinshaw, okay, winning a European Cup, which they hadn't done for 41 years. And I've seen all the feedback, okay, there are a lot of Spurs supporters that are not happy with the decision. There are some Spurs supporters that have stuck to their guns and they wanted him out and they're happy about it. I think they'll come to regret that. It just beats me, though, yeah, because also the Spurs players have come out in support of him, yeah. Pedro, Richarlison, Son, okay, the youngsters, Bergvall, Gray, I think Maddison as well. Yeah, quite a lot of them. So it just goes to show Ange hadn't lost the dressing room. But I said that before, you saw it, okay, in some of the performances. Now, rumour has it that they knew there was no way they were going to qualify for the Champions League via the league. Ange had just too many injuries. And I know people are saying you can't use that as an excuse. A lot of team had injuries. But I'm sorry, I've said it before, Vicario was out. Then you've got your 2 centre-halves that are out, yeah? And, Solanke was out. Maddison was out. They just had too many injuries. And let's be honest, Spurs don't have that much depth, yeah? So I say to myself, okay, if that's true, Ange has achieved his objective, which is winning the Europa League Cup final, so they've got a trophy, and qualifying for the Champions League. Now, let's not forget, Levy has some form, yeah? He has some history. He's had Pochettino. After Pochettino had taken him to the Champions League final, which they lost. And instead of, using that as a springboard and investing in players to take Spurs forward, Levy didn't spend any money. So, the results didn't go to plan, and Pochettino gets sacked. Jose Mourinho gets sacked 6 days before a final. So with that in mind, I say, well, why didn't you sack? And this is my question to Levy. Why did you not sack Ange Postecoglou before the Europa Cup final? Because let's be honest, if he'd done it then, there wouldn't have been an uproar. Because most of the Spurs fans would have been okay with it. Because I don't think any of them really believed that they could win. That would have been the right moment for Levy to go ahead and sack Ange Postecoglou without any blowback. But at the moment, he's getting blowback. Now, look, let's be honest, Levy isn't liked. The fan base don't want him. They've made their voice clear. Maybe they need to make it clearer. Maybe the protests which they've organised and done hasn't been enough. I don't know. I'm not a Spurs fan. I can only tell you by what I've seen and what I've heard. Conte just won the league with Naples, yeah? Conte, he gets sacked because he voiced his opinion, and it wasn't appreciated. So you've had all these managers, okay, Spirito Santo, Pochettino, Mourinho, Conte. Levy sacks managers every 18 months, yeah? Finally, you get a manager that, yes, granted, the league form was absolutely not acceptable, if you want. Yeah, it wasn't acceptable. But if you go and analyse it, when he had his first team back four, okay, his first choice back four, and Vicario in goal, they actually played well, lost less games, okay, and were a force to be reckoned with. So when people turn around and say, you can't use, their injuries as an excuse, I disagree with them, yeah? Now, I've always said everyone has a right to their opinion, okay? But I honestly believe if Ange had the back four and Vicario for most of the season, I don't think they would have ended up in 17th place in the league. Now, everyone's going on about that. Everyone is, it's not acceptable, it's not acceptable. I understand that completely. But my question is this, up until now, and I've heard a few Spurs fans say this, before they were challenging. They were finishing second, or they were finishing third, or they were finishing fourth or fifth, whatever, yeah? Yeah, challenging, but not winning, not bringing home a trophy. So, what is the objective of Spurs? What is the objective of Levy? I'll tell you what I think. This is my opinion. I could be wrong, yeah? But this is my opinion. I believe that Levy isn't interested in winning trophies. If he had kept Ange, he would have had to back him because they're in the Champions League next season. I believe Levy, okay, is only interested in coming in a top 4, 5 or 6 place so that they're in Europe and they get the European money, the pot, whatever it is. Obviously, Champions League is higher. Because let's be honest, Levy's a businessman. And a great businessman at that, yeah. But I don't think football is his thing. He's using Spurs Football Club as a business. He's happy that they finish like in the top 4, 5 or 6 place. And when they do that, I believe that it appeases the Spurs fans. Because let's be honest, yeah, you know, when you hear comments like, oh, you know, at least we were challenging. Arsenal have been challenging since Arteta come in. He's won 1 cup, the FA Cup final, in his first season, but that was Unai Emery's team. Ever since Arteta has had his players in, take nothing away from him, I think he's improved the team, slowly building, but we ain't won anything. And he's been at Arsenal longer than Ange was at Spurs. Now you can turn around and say, oh yeah, well at least Arsenal never finished 17th. To be totally honest, if they'd finished 17th and won the Europa League Cup final and qualified for the Champions League, I'd be happy, because then I'd be saying, okay, it's an anomaly. It's never happened before. You can have an anomaly in a season, a one-off. Now go in, invest money, get the players you need to, pay the wages you have to, and use it as a springboard for success. Levy ain't doing that. Levy is interested, and I repeat, this is my opinion. Hold on. Bloody hell, that's loud. I don't know whether that's a bike or a car, but it's loud. I think it's a motorbike. Anyway, I still bloody hear him. Like I was saying, this is just my opinion, yeah? But I believe Levy is only interested in qualifying for Europe, okay, and cashing the money. Now, a lot of names have been chucked around who's going to take over Ange Postecoglou, yeah? But before I go on to that, yeah, I was talking to a few of my friends, you know, even Arsenal boys, you know, my mate Ling, who's an Aberdeen supporter, and they're saying, oh, well, Ange should have just, after the Europa League Cup final, he should have just, you know, resigned, walked off with dignity. Nah, no, mate, no, excuse me. If Ange had done that, it would have cost him, I don't know how much it is, 7 million or whatever it is, 5 million. It would have cost him, because then Levy would not have had to pay him off. You lot put yourself in Ange's position. I think he knew what was coming. Ange isn't stupid, yeah. Ange made it public that he wanted to stay, so that everyone knew that there was no way he was going to walk out on the team. And to be totally honest, I think Ange did want to stay. But on the flip side of the coin, I think it's a blessing in disguise for Ange, yeah? I really do. The question is, what's next for Ange? Okay, but we'll get on to that. Let's get back to Levy, yeah? So there's a lot of names that have been chucked around. You know, there was Xavi, who's at the moment on sabbatical. I don't think he wants to come back. That's what I heard. Pochettino, he's made it clear he's not leaving. He's the manager of the USA and they're going to the World Cup. So, well, he's in the USA, so automatic qualification. Iraola, if I've pronounced that right, Glasner, Silva, but it looks like Thomas Frank. Is it Thomas Frank? Thomas Frank. Okay, it looks like he's the favourite, the Brentford manager. You know, I don't know much about him, but is he the manager to... Yeah, they probably will compete in the league. I mean, you know, he has his set ways. He's done well with Brentford, but Champions League stage, I don't think he's got any experience. But again, I think it's just a case of Levy saying to himself, well, okay, you know, if he doesn't do well, the fans will understand. They'll know that they have to give him time. But I do not see any intention to have someone in there and build. I thought that was what was going to happen with Ange Postecoglou. I thought they brought him in so that he could build a team for the future. Because let's be honest, if you're changing your managers every 18 months, every 18 months you're resetting. And if you're resetting every 18 months, yeah, you might have success one season, you know. But so far, that hasn't been the case, apart from Ange. The only difference is, I think Ange would have won trophies, a lot more trophies for Spurs. So let's get back to Ange. What's next for him? Personally, I don't know. I don't think that Ange will have any problems finding a team to manage. What I would like is to see Ange in the Premier League, though, yeah? I'd like him to stay there because he's been a breath of fresh air, yeah? He has been. And I know people have said, you know, his interviews with the media, he's been narky, so on and so forth. Put yourself in his position where they're repeatedly asking questions which has been asked before and he's answered it. Or where they ask questions to antagonize him. You know, you put yourself in Ange's position, you're going to get to the stage and say, you know what, are this lot stupid? Did they not hear me the first time? You'd get antagonized as well, and I think you'd turn around. Mourinho was a classic. Mourinho was a classic. And Mourinho was a breath of fresh air when it came to handling the media. So we're going to miss that, his honesty, okay? And let's not forget that Ange defended every, interview. He defended his players and he defended the club, okay? That's a great sign of a gentleman and a professional. Now, I've heard nothing on what's happening with Ange. I think he's still on holiday. You know, obviously they probably have communicated the fact that he was being let go before it came out. I would hope so, at least. Okay, the worst thing that could happen is that they communicate it to the public and Ange finds out via, the news, you know, the media. That would be very poor and unprofessional of Spurs, but I honestly believe that they did communicate with him first. Okay, so what's next for Spurs? You know what? I'm so glad I'm not a Spurs supporter. I never thought I'd hear myself say this, but to a degree, I feel sorry for them. Look, like I said, I'm sorry for Ange, yeah, I feel for him because, you know, he didn't deserve to be treated that way. I don't think Spurs deserve a manager like him. From an Arsenal point of view, I'm happy that Levy doesn't have the foresight to see, the potential of what Ange could bring to Spurs success-wise. So I'm quite happy that he's not going to be at Spurs. You know, I don't care where he goes, any other Premier League team, if they take him, if anyone's smart. And I tell you what, if Brentford were to go to, Thomas Frank was to go to Spurs from Brentford, if I was the Brentford board, I'd be knocking on Ange's door and saying, listen, Ange, why don't you come and manage us? We're losing Thomas. He's gone to take your place at Spurs. We'll give you the backing. We'll give you the time to build, Tell us your vision and we'll back your vision. That's what I would do. And I tell you what, if that was to happen, and then Brentford were to go on and Ange was to bring them trophies and Spurs were to get relegated, I don't think that's going to happen. But just theorize it, yeah? Thomas Frank comes in, He's taking on a poison chalice. I've told you this before. He's taking on a poison chalice, okay? And he doesn't, let's say he loses the first 10 games, or he doesn't win in the first 10 games. What happens if he gets sacked midway through the season? Yeah, he'll get a payoff, okay? But what's that going to do for him and for the Spurs fans? Look, it's going to be very interesting, yeah? I said I wasn't going to do any more Spurs videos if Ange was sacked. But I thought about it. And to be totally honest, wherever Ange goes, I'll probably do videos on him because I follow Ange. Okay, I want to see how he gets on. So wherever he goes, I will be keeping an eye on him and probably doing videos on Ange Postecoglou. But I'll probably still be doing videos on Spurs just to see how they're getting on after they've got rid of what I believe to be one of the best managers that they could have had. And I'm sorry, okay, right, but Thomas Frank, I don't think he's up to Ange Postecoglou's level. Again, I don't know that much about him, yeah, but I do about Ange, so maybe I'm wrong, okay, it's just an opinion. Silva, Glasner, whoever, okay. Now, if Spurs had got somebody like Xavi, Simone Inzaghi, or Luis Enrique, then I'd be turning around and saying, you know what? We may have to watch out for Spurs this season. But that said, they had Conte, they had Mourinho, and still they didn't win a trophy. The closest they got was with Pochettino, who took them to the Champions League final, which they lost. And then Levy did not bother to invest in players. He did not bother to use that as a springboard for success. Like I said, I am so glad I'm not a Spurs fan. Look, that's it for me. I don't have much more to say. Looking forward to the developments. Like I said, Thomas Frank is a favourite, so it's probably going to be there. What does interest me is where Ange Postecoglou is going to go. Anyway, me Shah. I'm out.